Hello again. Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 here with Alfred Ezman, ready to do SEC baseball power rankings. Week 8 is just ahead, looking like a topsy-turvy year in the SEC. We'll get into ranking the 14 teams, telling you why we have them ranked, where we have them ranked before we get into that. Reminder, this brought to you by BetOnline. The tournament's here. That is basketball tournament. BetOnline, your bracket headquarters for this season with the best bracket contest out there. Odds, lines, info on every game and round right up to the national championship. You can access the most up-to-the-minute wagering information anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. Track your bracket real-time all the way through to the tournament. Head to BetOnline today. Get in on all the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, I'm a little more dialed into basketball or to baseball this week than the previous week, but still keeping an eye on basketball too, so not quite where I'm going to be, but we're going to give it a go. We've done our research. We're going to give you our top picks and why for this week. We start at the bottom, the number 14 Missouri Tigers. I got to see Missouri play this weekend. Did not give up a lot of runs to a slumping Vanderbilt team. Pitched pretty well, fielded really well for the most part, but Missouri just cannot score in this league against SEC pitching. In fact, the Tigers have scored 15 runs in 9 SEC games. That is why they are ranked last, among other things. All right, number 13, Ole Miss. The Rebels are just having a tough go of it right now. Ole Miss has got an ERA of what? 5.62. That's been getting progressively worse lately. The Rebels are just having a tough go of it. It's a dog-eat-dog league. Somebody's got to get the worst end of that. This weekend, Ole Miss lost its series to Kentucky, and boy, it was lopsided. I thought this was a time that maybe Ole Miss had a chance to recover against a Kentucky team that doesn't maybe put runs on you like some of the other ones in the league do, especially playing at Swayze Field where the ball can get out against a Kentucky team that is not a home run dependent team, but that's not how it went this weekend. So we've got Ole Miss number 13 in our power rankings at this point as we pull the banners up. Number 12, Auburn. Man, I don't know if anybody's had a tougher go of it so far than Auburn. Auburn has won 1 league game and lost 8. But look, the schedule so far, it just has been brutal. Arkansas at A&M, at Vandy. I don't think any team in the league has had a worse schedule than Auburn has so far. The Tigers have been close in some of these games. In fact, had a chance to take one from A&M this weekend, just could not do it. Auburn so far is minus 28 in run differential in the league, which is pretty good for a team that's 1-8, to be honest with you. So I'm expecting better from the Tigers. Butch Thompson's club never gives up. Don't expect it to do this season. Look for Auburn to maybe make a little bit of a charge as the schedule gets easier. All right, I'm bringing my silent partner, Alfred, here. This is how it goes. He covers about half the league, and I cover about half the league. And then we get together, and we let the guy speak on the teams. He's watched a little bit more. So, Alfred, your turn with Georgia. The top 2 home run hitting teams in the country, I believe, matched up in Knoxville this weekend. I know you kept an eye on that series. Georgia won the Friday game. What was it, 16-2 or something like that, and then lost the next 2. It is not often you see a series that goes down the way that one did in Knoxville. What stood out to you about the Bulldogs, other than Charlie Condon?
Yeah, I was about to say, well, obviously Charlie Condon, he's been the talk of the town really around the country, but Georgia, it was 16-3 that first game. They took it by storm, and they just really caught Tennessee off guard. And that's the way to beat a Tennessee team, is if you're able to string some hits together against their pitching, it tends to fall apart pretty easily. That's happened before this season in the few losses they do have. But Tennessee was able to recover pretty nicely. They had a come from behind win and on Saturday. They won 16-11. They were down, I believe, 8-4 in that game. Dylan Dreiling had a big-time grand slam to kind of pick up a lot of the slack that allowed them to come back. I think Dalton Bargo also had his first home run in a Tennessee uniform that game as well. Sunday, this talk of the town was Xander Sechrist, who got the start. Tennessee won the game 7-0. Blanked a good hitting Georgia team. Really kind of like put a cap on how the weekend went for Tennessee. Xander went 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, no earned runs. Tennessee was in double figures in hits for all 3 games, and they are now first in the SEC in batting average at .332 as a team.
Georgia's pitching, I think, has been a concern, and that's not a team you want to play in a ballpark. But they got so many guys who can hit the ball, from Condon to Gonzalez. Corey Collins is having a big year. This is the team that is a legitimate team that I think can put a scare into anybody on any given weekend because of the way they hit. All right, Alabama next up at number 10. The Crimson Tide 4-5 in the SEC, -7 run differential in the league. This week in Alabama had some close ball games with South Carolina. Won one of those one-run contests in Sewell Thomas Stadium. Lost the finale to the Gamecocks 9-8, and in between with a 13-6 win. Alabama is a team where it started to have a little bit of a pitching problem in terms of injuries and stuff like that to its staff, I think. But watch out for that team as we go down the stretch. Alabama has really assembled some talent in the transfer portal and has been very, very competitive so far. And I think, again, scheduling in the SEC and where you play your games has been a big part of this season so far. Alabama's had 2 of its 3 series at home, but those have been to some pretty good South Carolina and Tennessee teams, and a loss to Georgia on the road at Foley Field where it got swept last weekend. Again, ballpark matchup, but not necessarily the one that turns out well for everybody. So that was a tough one for Alabama last weekend, but recovered this weekend. All right, number 9, Mississippi State. Another team that has been, I think, more competitive than we thought. State is actually +19 in runs to this point, but 4-5 in the league. So a team that maybe needs to catch a break at some point. What have you seen in the Bulldogs so far?
Yeah, this weekend they played Florida. Florida took 2 out of the 3 against them. The one win Mississippi State did have was this, and this seems to be a common theme this season. Herangelo was on the mound again in their win.
Yeah.
8 strikeouts and 7 innings of work, only 5 hits. He has the most innings, I think, of work out of any SEC pitcher right now, and it's easy to see why Mississippi State wins games when he's on the mound. Dakota Jordan homered twice in that game. David Mershon, their shortstop, also had a home run. And the other 2 games were kind of just big-time heartbreaks. We'll get into Florida in a bit, but Gade Kirkland with a walk-off in the first win, and then Jack Caglione with the walk-off in the second win. So Mississippi State on the short end of the stick. I think they played a Florida team, too, that needed, to get some wins because they have been just hot or cold this year. There's really been no in-between with them. So we'll have to see, but Mississippi State kind of in a similar boat with them. I think it's a tough series playing Florida when they're when their backs against the wall. So we'll have to see how they do. I'm still not giving up hope on Mississippi State being at least mid-tier to top-tier team in the SEC.
Speaking of schedules, LSU's 3 weekends so far at Mississippi State, Florida, in Baton Rouge, at Arkansas. Got Vandy coming up this weekend, 2 teams that really need to win a series. LSU got swept at Arkansas, which is going to happen to a lot of teams in Fayetteville this year. The Tigers are 2-7 in the SEC. I think that says more about the SEC than it does about LSU, although -28 run differential, you'd like to see something better than that. Any thoughts on what we saw out of the Tigers this weekend?
Yeah, I caught a lot of this series, actually. The way I put it, it was a back end of the bullpen battle for a good bit of it. I mean, you had, I think this was the second game, Gavin Guidry and Justin Lohr. They went 2.1 innings and just held Arkansas to 3 walks, and that's really it. But then, Arkansas, of course, it's Arkansas pitching. Their bullpen comes out the back end of it, and they hold LSU to just 2 hits, and they had no runs in the final 2 innings, and Arkansas would go on to win. Arkansas, I think the key for them, too, was they were able to match LSU's hitting, and I think you and I weren't necessarily sure if Arkansas could match some of the team's hits if they were able to get them. But they were able to do that, and I think Arkansas did not pitch quite awfully. Again, I think the bullpens really came in and did well. Another guy for LSU I was kind of happy with how he did was Griffin Herring out of the bullpen. 4.1 innings and 8 strikeouts is some nasty work for any pitcher at any level. So he played good as well. I just think, down the stretch, Arkansas was able to work their way out of these tight situations better, and they got themselves the wins as opposed to LSU.
Yeah, LSU's got a chance to get that record closer to 500. Series at home this weekend with Vanderbilt, which has not played much on the road and was swept when it did. Series at Knoxville, that'll be tough, but then a road trip to Missouri and then home against Auburn and A&M. Again, not easy, but playing your own ballpark makes that a little bit easier. So the schedule about to ease up for the Tigers. All right, we've got next up number 7, South Carolina, a team that I think we had a hard time knowing what to do with, given the weird nature of their season. Of course, they start off early in the year losing that series to Clemson, where they lose a pair of 1-run games. I think had one rained out. Lose 2 out of 3 at Ole Miss to start the season. Sweep Vanderbilt last weekend pretty decisively, and then lose 2 of 3 at Alabama. Again, splitting a couple of 1-run games and then getting blown out. Any word about the Gamecocks to offer here?
Yeah, I mean, they played Alabama, and that's just a tough team to play based on how hard they can hit. I think I said Tennessee was first in the league in team batting average. I think Alabama, I'm almost certain, is second in the league in team batting average. So they're a team that can rake when needed, and they did in the first game they played. Alabama won at 13-6. I'd have to go back and see, but when looking at the box score and whatnot of it, it seemed like that was probably South Carolina's worst pitching day, at least in SEC play so far. It's whoever they threw out there, gave up, I think, at least 3 hits and almost 3 runs. So not a great day there, but USC comes out game 2 and they were they had their backs against the wall. Alabama was storming back in that 9th inning. Gage Miller for Bama had a big 2-run triple, and then McCants scored in Miller to make it a 1-run game. They were able to hold it off, though. That was a good hitting day for the Gamecocks. Dylan Brewer, Ethan Petrie, and Cole Messina are pretty much the main 3, the big 3 if you want this team when it comes to their hitting. Brewer homered in that second game, and I think Petrie and Messina had 2 RBIs respectively in that win as well. So, and if you're able to escape Alabama, a good hitting team, with a win and hold off a comeback like that, props to you. And I don't know about you, Chris, I still don't know what to make of the South Carolina team, and we're into April at this point.
Yeah, I think they're going to get a little better out of Petrie. I still trust that lineup. The pitching, I think, is going to be the question. They had the freshman last Sunday was really good. Tyler Pitzer against Vanderbilt. Eli Jones is a very talented kid. I think the question for me is, will they have enough arms who are consistently good enough? Because I think the bats are probably going to be there for them. All right, number 6, Florida. And whatever you think of Florida is probably based on what you think of their pitching and whether it's going to get better and how much importance you place on the midweeks, because Florida cannot beat anybody in the midweek right now. But on weekends, really tough. I mean, it's been kind of a thing on the internet with where Florida gets ranked, because most of the emphasis we have seems to be on weekend series, where the Gators been pretty good. Florida has taken series, in fact, taken all 3 series, A&M, LSU, Mississippi State. Those are things that is going to get the selection committee's attention, obviously, when the field is picked. But midweek losses, 4 in a row now, to Stetson, I believe, Florida State, Jacksonville, and again to Florida State, all on Tuesdays. I guess there was a win or 2 in between with Bethune-Cookman and UCF thrown in there for good measure. But this is a team that struggled at a conference. I don't know how much you got a chance to watch the Gamecocks this weekend, but what are your thoughts here, Alfred?
Yeah, Florida, it is funny. I see that all the time on Twitter with the whole midweek crisis they seem to be having at times. And, a few of those losses are bad. I will say Florida State, outside of the SEC, they're a great baseball team. If you've got a chance to watch them play, I suggest you do it. But back to Florida and their series against Mississippi State. One good thing I saw from them in the first game, they won 7-6. The main guys who hit home runs for them, I would like to think, are Caglione and Shelton. But we got home runs out of Ty Evans and Tanner Garrison, and that helped them to the 7-6 win. Of course, Cade Kirkland had the walk-off. The Sunday win, it was a very good bullpen day for Luke McNeely. Was very impressed with what he had to offer. 3.1 innings of no earned runs, able to hold that Mississippi State lineup just enough. And then, of course, Jacques Caglione had the walk-off in the ninth there. Florida just seems, again, I said it when we were talking about Mississippi State, they just seem to find a way when they're put in the question and they're backed against the wall to win these series in SEC play. And down the stretch, that's going to help them, especially if, they're at home again and teams are coming to Gainesville. No matter who you are, it's going to be hard to win just because of how ferocious they seem to get when they see a team with an SEC patch on.
Yeah, Florida's ERA 5.97. That's problematic. That's not what we thought we would get this year. Base runners per innings pitched 1.63 if you include hit batsmen, giving up home runs over 3% of the time. Just a very un-Florida-like pitching performance so far. And I calculated free pass rate. That's hit batsmen plus walks. And Florida's giving out free passes nearly 15% of the time. The numbers on this team are all over the place because the weekend series wins are what people are going to pay attention to. And I think the midweek pitching, you can marginalize a little bit because when you get into regionals, some of the guys that you throw there, you may not see on weekends unless you get in the losers bracket, but you also might. And so if you're Florida, I think when we see this team in a regional, Florida's going to want to win its first few games or win its first ones and get in the winner's bracket because pitching depth, I think, is a little bit more problematic than we thought. Vanderbilt feels like an old school team, pitching and defense. The starters, I think Vanderbilt's had maybe 4 starting pitchers go over 100 pitches this year. It might even be 5. The bullpen has been a little bit of a concern. Vanderbilt's gone freshman heavy there. Saw this team this weekend. I don't know what has happened to Vanderbilt's confidence at the plate, but it is gone. This team, I think, has had, 6 or 7 consecutive games where it's not touched 5 runs. Now, the pitching has carried the Commodores in that span. And, again, we all knew Vanderbilt had arms, but the bats have just gone missing for these guys. But I'll tell you where the bats have not gone missing. That's Tennessee. You touched on them lately. This is a team I think is Tennessee 2 in the country in home runs after this weekend, or did it pass Georgia? I think it's still 2.
It is still 2, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, I kind of talked about them a good bit, but I think the key for them, and we'll see how far this carries them, but it's been they just flat out hit you, and that's how they're going to get wins. It doesn't really matter how the pitching goes. The pitching's just a bonus, like we saw from Xander Sechrist on Sunday, but most of the time it's if you're able to out hit the other opponent. And I believe they had double figures. I said this, they had double figures in all 3 games. So it's a shock they were only able to get 3 runs out of that first game. Going forward though, it'll be interesting to see with them how their pitching holds up. I think, you at somewhere down the line, there's a chain link that breaks, whether it's their bullpen or late into a start in the 5th or 6th inning of whoever's starting that day. We'll have to see, but they were able to, hold down a tough Georgia team coming in. We'll see. I guess, people would be quick to say maybe that series would have been different if it was in Athens. And I think there's a chance it could have been, but they took advantage of the opportunity that was in front of them, and they're continuing to play well. I mean, they're taking care of business in their midweeks, working their way up towards the top. They're arguably, along with Alabama, the top hitting team in the SEC at this point. So that should carry them very far. And at this point, I'd be shocked if there isn't a regional in Knoxville come NCAA tournament time.
Yeah, I think Tennessee, let me double check this, leads the league in runs scored in all games. It does, 297, run differential plus 184. I think that series could have been about the same at Foley Field in Georgia because that's also a small park where it gets out. So yeah, wherever you match up those 2 teams, I think there were going to be a lot of runs scored, and that's what we saw. Now, here's something we didn't expect pre-conference. Kentucky at number 3. And I don't think that you'll see Kentucky, the number 3 team in all the polls nationally. But look, 8-1, tied for the top record in the conference, leading the SEC East. Some of that has been schedule. Kentucky's schedule has been easier than most so far. Georgia at home, at Missouri, at Ole Miss, although 2 road trips out of 3. So there's that. It's never easy to win on the road in anybody's place. But what's impressive about Kentucky is just the overall numbers. 91 runs scored, 40 given up in the SEC, plus 51 run differential in the league. I don't know how you – Kentucky, based on results, I think has got to be top 5, and we slotted them at number 3 again. I don't know that the national pollsters are going to do that, but I think it's deserved. Okay, number 2 we've got this week, Texas A&M, and I'm behind on my banners here. There's Kentucky at 3, A&M at 2. Too many things going on here, Alfred.
I know.
In any case.
So thank God March Madness is ending so we can, focus up a little more at least.
Yeah, there's a lot going on around here. But, yeah, A&M number 2, I don't know how you can really move A&M below that. Are the Aggies a little fortunate? Yeah, probably plus 11 run differential in the league. That usually doesn't come out to 6-3, but in this case it does. By comparison, Mississippi State plus 19, but 4-5 in the league. But pitching has been surprisingly good for this team so far. We've touched on that all year. But Braden Montgomery, their transfer from Stanford, is really starting to hit. Got 8 home runs in 9 SEC games. So pretty incredible performance there for the Aggies in terms of just how consistent they've been this season.
Yeah, they've been pretty good. And speaking of Montgomery, I believe he homered 3 times this weekend against Auburn, which is pretty good numbers as well. That second game they played, he had 4 runs in that game as well. It was a home run fest for them. That looked like, A&M was just getting whatever they wanted over the wall. Camarillo homered, Lavalette homered, Sorrell homered, Grahovic homered in that second game as well. I'll give Auburn credit. That's who they played in that second game. They kept up with them for a lot of it. But again, Ted Burton had the walk-off in the end, and A&M was just able to squeak it out. So that's why I think you said they're a little fortunate. These games that they played were close this weekend, but again, it's hard to argue with what they did hitting the baseball. They had 16 hits in both of their 2 games, so very good numbers from them. And then obviously that overall record. I know those 3 losses were in conference play, but hard to argue with 25-3 at this point in the season. I mean, they're on a roll and fighting on the heels of our number 1 team here in our power rankings.
Yeah, hard to argue with Arkansas at number 1. I'm just going to give you some numbers on the season. Arkansas, which swept LSU at Baum Stadium this weekend, 8-1 in the league, 54 runs allowed, 26 runs given up, a plus 26 run differential. That leads the league. The 2 next teams in terms of runs allowed in the SEC are Kentucky and Vanderbilt at 40. So that's a pretty substantial gap between Arkansas's pitching staff and the rest of the league. I knew we thought this pitching staff would be good. I don't know if we thought it would be that good. I mean, that's just amazing in a day and age where the ball is just getting out of the yard. Some other stats for you here. Arkansas has allowed 73 runs this season. The second best number is A&M at 106. This team is 23-3. Number 1 team in the conference. And to me, anytime you've got something that's close, and I don't know that this really was close, but I always lean to pitching and defense, especially this day and age when you can prevent runs at a time where anybody and everybody is scoring them. That's where I tip the not in favor if it's close. But just some more numbers on Arkansas's pitching so far. 1.15 runners allowed per inning pitched. Next best number in the league, Vanderbilt at 128. Arkansas is allowing home runs 1.9% of the time. That's the lowest home run rate in the league. Strikeout rate 35% as a staff. That's unbelievable. Free pass rate just under 11%. That is second in the league, I think. No, third behind Tennessee and A&M. So Arkansas has just done it with pitching. I know people want the bats to come along, but hey, look, when you can pitch that well, you can win this league. You can be awfully tough to beat in a weekend. That's what Arkansas is right now, and I don't see the Hogs falling out of the top spot anytime soon. Of course, you say that. As competitive as this league has been, you never know. Arkansas's got Ole Miss this weekend, then it goes to Alabama and South Carolina, so we'll see how the Hogs do out of Fayetteville. But when you can pitch like that, I like your chances. All right, we'll be back at it next week as we get more into baseball, and basketball consumes a little bit less of my time. For Alfred Ezman, I'm Chris Lee. We're your Southeastern 14 presented by Bet Online.